Welcome to Fancounters. My name's Nick. Thanks for being here. You can follow us on social media by going to @Fancounters Live. We're on Twitter. You can also follow us on Facebook. We are on Facebook by searching Fancounters. Our small private group is called Sharpie Nation. So either way, you can catch up with the show, communicate with other fans of the show, all by going to Facebook or Twitter. Thanks again for coming back this week. We've got our wrap-up conversation with Jerry Mathers from Leave It to Beaver. He was nice enough to join us for a second time, and we've got kind of a 20 questions thing going on today. So we hope you enjoy that part of the show. Now, next week, make sure you come back because although Jim Florentine from Crank Anchors and his Revenge of the Telemarketers will not join us, we are going to do our tribute to Jim Florentine next week and do some ranting about some topics that are driving us crazy, including the podcast that is driving me crazy. I can't even listen to it, but I'm very jealous of the podcast at the same time. You'll find out who that show is next week. After that, when we come back from that show, I'm going to tell you about an experience that I had doing a 48-hour film festival that I'm going to be starting to do tomorrow night. They're going to send me my genre, a prop, a location, and a line that has to be in the film. And on Saturday, I'll be filming the movie, turning it in on Sunday after it's all scored and put in sound effects and all that stuff. And then we'll see how it does. Now, we do have the opportunity to be screened at the Cannes Film Festival and Filmapalooza, which is in the Netherlands. It's a film festival there. So we'll see what happens. I'm kind of nervous and anxious at the same time. And I have to be honest, this one experience has made me lose a lot of sleep. I'm a little concerned about how it's going to go, but I'm sure it's going to go fine. Now, if you remember a couple of years ago on the podcast, I talked about doing combat theater, and that's where you write a script on a Friday night. Saturday, the actors practice it, and then they perform it in front of a live audience. Well, this is kind of the same thing, except you have to do all the post-production and the filming in a very short period of time. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll let you know about that in a couple weeks. But without further ado, let's finish our episode with the great Jerry Mathers from Leave It to Beaver, courtesy of the official Leave It to Beaver Facebook group and the official new Leave It to Beaver Facebook group, who allowed us to get in on this interview. So, without further ado, here is Jerry Mathers.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fancounters with Nick and Elizabeth on the Podfix Network.
There was this mob of people, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
Stop following me. Don't come around my house. If you do, the cops are going to be at yours.
If I'm having dinner with my wife, don't sit down at my table. Don't follow me into the bathroom.
Can I take a picture? We're going to, oh my God.
I think this guy wants to fight me. Ended up being a fan.
I'm the only one that's ever been on Sam Jackson and lived to tell about it.
Well, guess what? I have a big surprise for you.
That's why we call it Fancounters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
Jerry, thanks for joining us for part 2 of this interview. One of the things that makes fans so proud of Leave It to Beaver is the fact that you and Tony Dow are so proud to have been a part of this show. It's something that means a lot to you. So I'm kind of wondering, what does it mean to your adult children to know that you were part of such an iconic show?
Well, honestly, I don't even think they see that. They know the show, but they're so used to it. I mean, it's like if you're president of the United States and you have kids, they just think, oh yeah, my dad's the president. You know, but my kids know that I'm an actor, and they know that I'm me. But when I go to the set, I have other kids that that are supposedly my family and all sorts of stuff like that. And they're all very proud of me. I mean, my daughters are married now, so they have different names. But they were always knew that when people would come up to them when they were in school and say, Mathers, oh, that's the Beaver, da da da. And they got to go to a lot of parades, and a lot of times they would ride in the cars with me, or a lot of the different things that you get to do as someone that's in Hollywood that a lot of kids don't get to do. We go to premieres and just a lot of fun things that they got to live through that honestly, if I had a regular life, they wouldn't have been able to do.
Speaking of your adult children, what careers have they pursued?
My kids were very smart. They went behind the scenes. So my son's a sound man, and one of my daughters is an executive at Netflix, and the other one's a teacher. So they're not silly enough to be actors.
Now, I know you have grandkids, and I think it would be very interesting to find out, what do they think of the show? I mean, you're a little boy in the show, so it's not like you could say, hey, look, that's Grandpa. And then they look at the TV and look back at you, and they realize that's not the same person. I don't think they can make that connection. But have your grandkids seen the show, and what do they think?
They're the oldest of them is 4, so they don't. I don't even think they put it together. I know they have watched it because their parents, I think, have showed it to them. But I think they'll have to be in there at least 5 to 8 to 9 to 10 to be able to think about it. And then it's very hard for them. I know I've had other people who have kids, and they say, my son wants to meet you, and they come and they go, no, you're not the Beaver. Beaver's my size. Yeah. No. They don't comprehend that. Yes, it was made, in the 50s, and someday you'll be big too, But they were thinking that they were going to meet me and we were going to go out in the backyard and play.
As a kid, when you were growing up, what cartoons were your favorites?
I watched a lot of Disney stuff. I'd always watch the Saturday morning cartoons because I worked 5 days a week, basically. So Monday through Friday, I was out of the house by 8 o'clock, but I wasn't home till 5, and if on a couple days of the week we would have readings and stuff like that, we'd leave at 9, I'd be home at 6, and we'd have dinner, I'd study my lines, and maybe watch one show and go to bed.
Sticking with television for a minute, was there a particular show that you were interested in where you wished that you would never miss the show and you tried to watch it every week?
Oh, I always liked all the westerns, so Wagon Train, and they filmed right down the street from us, and Father Knows Best was people I knew. They weren't on the same studio a lot. But I knew most of the actors, so they were friends of mine. It was always fun seeing the different actors and actresses that I worked with or saw at events, and then seeing their shows and knowing that, I knew who they were and who they really were, where other people thought they were just like that, like John Forsythe and Shirley MacLaine and all the wonderful people that I got to know. And Alfred Hitchcock was on the studio a lot doing things like Psycho and a lot of things like that. And when I was doing The Trouble with Harry, I used to sit on his lap and read my lines. So, a big Rolls Royce would come up with a big chauffeur, and the door would open from the back, and he would, stick out his head and say, hello, Jerry. And everybody would say, you know Alfred Hitchcock? And I'd say, yeah,
All right, so besides Leave It to Beaver, what do you think are maybe the top 5 classic television shows of all time?
I Love Lucy, I think, would have to be in there. Father Knows Best. Maverick. Gunsmoke. Let's see, one more. Probably All in the Family.
I'm not sure if you have Netflix or Hulu or anything like that, but of the current shows that are out right now, what are you watching?
Well, almost anything. I mean, I'm very eclectic, so I watch a lot of old things, but I watch a lot of new things. There's no certain genre that I say, well, it has to be this. And as an actor, I like to see a whole bunch of different things. So, I don't watch a whole lot of, honestly, daytime talk, but I do watch a lot of movies and do a lot of news. I like to be kept up on world affairs and what's going on in the world. So I do get up every morning, and first thing I turn on, to my wife's kind of discontent, watch for an hour or so, and she says, how can you watch it every day? It's the same. I say, no, it's different news every day. It's the same people. They talk about the same thing.
That's because they do talk about the same thing every week. Every night, in fact. Now, Jerry, if you had to pick another TV show, say Leave It to Beaver was not a hit series, what show would you have picked to be on?
Probably a cop show or a Western, maybe. I always, it'd always be fun. I know it'd be a lot of work to work with, like horses, but, something like Maverick or Wagon Train or, all the different shows, different genres. It's always interesting. It was interesting to be able to play a little boy, but it would be interesting, too, to be able to play a little boy in a different time period.
Now, Jerry, I know you're into music. I think last time you were here, we talked about you being in the band Beaver and the Trappers. So what kind of music do you enjoy listening to now?
I like Cream. I like the Rolling Stones. I like the Beatles. I also had a lot the Beach Boys. I lived out here in California, so there were a lot of different concerts in Los Angeles. You know, it was one of a venue where a lot of people play, so I got to see a lot of those people live.
Oh, when was that?
That was KZEY, and it was in Los Angeles, and that was in the early 80s. And I was working in real estate at the time. I wasn't working as an actor, and I was selling a house to a guy, and he goes, you know, you're Jerry Mathers. I said, yeah. He goes, well, I'm the program manager for this radio station, and we've just lost our Saturday and Sunday overnight DJ, and it would just be fun if you came down. So I said, well, what do I have to do? He said, well, just come down, and you know, we'll put you with an engineer, and all you have to do is play rock and roll records. And so I did that. And after about 3 weeks, he said, how would you like to be a full-time DJ? And I said, well, that'd be fine. He said, well, you're going to have to, we'll set you up right now with an engineer, but you're going to have to take a test, and then you can be your own engineer. And so then I started doing that, and I was having a very good time. And then the new Leave It to Beaver came up, and so I had to quit that because I didn't have another full-time job.
Now, did you use the name Jerry Mathers, or did you have a radio name?
I had Jerry Mathers Gathers with Rock and Roll for the Mind, Body, and Soul.
Now, I have to imagine with Jerry Mathers being on the air, and, you know, back then a lot of people did the call-in things where you can call in and request a song, but I have to imagine that people would call in just to talk to you. Am I right?
Pretty much. They would do both. They always had questions, and, you know, I was very open. It wasn't like I was trying to hide from being on Leave It to Beaver, so, you know, I'd have, like, a lot of times over I did 6 hours on the air, so I was looking for things to do. So I'd have a question and answer period for about 20 minutes, and people would call in, and one person would say this, and another person would say, well, what about this? You had said this at one time. I'd say, well, yes, I said this, but this has meant that, and, you know, whatever. So we got a lot of banter going back and forth, which is good because you keep an audience that way, and made it a lot more interesting than just playing the same records over and over again.
When you're as young as 7, 8, and 9, a lot of people wonder, what made it fun for you to keep going back week after week? Now, obviously, you're getting a paycheck, and that makes it worth it. But for it to be rewarding to a child or a little kid, what made it, like, what was your motivation for wanting to go back day after day, week after week, year after year?
It was fun. I mean, I had basically almost probably 100 people in the cast and crew. And you can't make a child work, so everyone tried to make it fun for me. So when we weren't filming, we'd be out throwing footballs, baseballs, playing games, all sorts of things like that. And it was just something that was very, very fun and easy for me.
So even as a kid, you were never bothered by, you know, just the sheer amount of work that it took?
I'll tell you an interesting thing I did. Because we had a few shows where I had to have funny things done to me, like the haircut, and where I cut my own hair. They had to have the very best makeup man on the Universal lot. His name was Bob Don, and he only worked on very big movies usually, but everybody wanted to work on Leave It to Beaver because it's great when you work with kids because you go home a lot earlier. And so he also did, for Alfred Hitchcock, Psycho, he did the skull, except what they had to do was get a skull from, I don't know where they get it, but they had one, a medical skull, and he had to age it and then glue the hair on, which is a very long and tedious process. But for a kid, seeing a real human skull, I thought that was the most fun ever. And so I got to glue on and age that skull for Psycho with him. But I didn't get a credit.
Now that you should have, because I think a credit from Jerry Mathers in Psycho would have just raised the street cred of the movie. Now, let's talk a little bit about commercials. You've done them, right?
I've done commercials, for Ford and Chevrolet and Purina and a lot of different things. And that's how I actually started when I was 2 years old, was basically doing modeling and commercials. I used to go on to the Ed Wynn show when I was 2 years old, and I would walk across the stage. He would be doing his monologue. And they said, that man out there, and I knew him. I talked to him. He says, I knew he's a really nice guy. He's going to say, go away, kids, you bother me, but don't go away. And he told me, I'm your friend. This is part of acting. And I said, okay. And he said, go away. And I'd say, no, man, you have to do a commercial for Pet Milk because and it was baby formula at the time. Pet canned milk was also baby formula. And he'd finally say, okay, I'll do your commercial. Just don't bother me anymore. And then I'd give him the the script, and he'd read the script and say, "This is the best thing for children, pet milk." And then I'd take my little bottle and walk off in diapers and with 6 guns and a cowboy hat.
A couple of your later commercials were both for cereal. You and Tony Dow were featured on a box of cornflakes, and then later on, you and Barbara Billingsley were on a cereal called Oatmeal Crisp.
On the first one, we were the first actor ever to be on a cornflake box. That was quite an honor.
Cool. Now, Jerry, I want to do a little bit of rapid fire. You can tell me a story. You can just give me a word, whatever you want to do. But these are questions that after you appeared last time, fans sent in. So we want you to be able to answer them for the fans. Now, the first one comes in and it says, do you have any hidden talents?
Well, I play guitar, but a lot of people know about it because I've done records. So that would probably be the most secret one. I haven't done a record in a long time. I do play guitar. I used to play with a folk group, so it's mostly folk. It's not a lot of rock and roll, but I had a really good time doing it. It's something I enjoyed.
What is your guilty pleasure?
Probably candy. I like cookies and candy, so I have a sweet tooth. I have to watch my weight very much, so it's not anything I can indulge very often, but it's something I really like licorice. So I got that from when I worked with Bob Hope on Seven Little Floyds while I was eating licorice. I'd never had any before that show. My mom was more of a See's, and parents were more of a See's candy people. So I developed on that movie a taste for licorice, and I've always liked black licorice ever since then.
Black licorice is something that I won't touch personally or my kids, but if we get any for trick-or-treat, I can make sure to send it your way. Let's go to the next question, which is, what is the strangest job that you've ever had?
Well, I used to be a gunfighter. And you'll see, what do you mean you were a gunfighter? I used to work, there are places across the United States that are like, and I just tell you this because maybe more people know what I'm talking about by saying this, Knott's Berry Farm, and they have gunfights. And so I was always lucky enough, and I wanted to be with the bad guys. So I would go, and every day, I think it was 8 or 9 times a day, we would rob the bank and rob the livery stable and get the horses out and ride into town and ride out of town, and then we'd have a big shootout with the sheriff, and I would always get shot in front of an audience. I mean, the people would line the side of these little frontier towns, and they always had a fort, and it was a lot of fun. That's how I said that was my summer vacation, and I got paid for it.
Huh. What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
Let's see, the biggest risk? I can't really think of any risks I've ever taken. I'm kind of, I'm a philosophy major for Berkeley, so I use a lot of logic, and I usually don't take risks. I mean, if I think something's too risky, I walk away. Invested a lot of money, and so I've learned that I don't manage risk well. If it's too risky, I just say I think I can get along without that.
All right. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
Never give up. If you want something, go after it, and never give up.
That's a good one. How about the worst advice you've ever been given?
You're a big star, and everyone loves you. You're going to do no matter what you do, it'll be right. No, that's not true.
All right. What's the best compliment you've ever received?
When I was on Broadway, people came over to me, and I had done film and movies and things like that. But to be on Broadway and people say, you're one of the best actors I've ever seen, or I've really enjoyed you on Broadway, that was something, because for an actor, that's like the pinnacle.
Think back to when you were acting in a lot of different projects. Who was or who would have been your dream co-star?
It would depend, because I always that sets me back to my directing. I'm also a member of the DGA and I'm a director, so it would depend on the part. I always liked Raquel Welch. In fact, Tony Dow basically stand-in, but then he became Raquel Welch's manager, and so I knew her as a child, and she was just a very nice person now.
If you could trade places for a day with one person, who would it be?
Who would I trade places for a day? Let's see. Maybe the King of England. That might be nice, or the King of someplace.
All right. Alive or dead, who would you want to take to lunch? And tell us why.
Albert Einstein, and ask him questions.
Another thing fans have asked, how do you spend your downtimes these days?
Well, I do have downtime, but not a whole lot of it. I'm actually keep very, very busy. I have a beautiful wife and grandkids, and we do a lot of babysitting. So our lives are a lot of socializing and going out and meeting people and just having a good time.
Okay. What is something that you are terrible at that you want to get better at?
Oh, terrible at that I wish I was better at. I'm terrible at a lot of things, but I just go ahead and do them anyway. So maybe keeping up with friends. I have so many friends that it's hard to keep up with all of them, and I always wish that I did that better and called them more often or was more sociable with them. But there's just so many of them that people, you haven't called me in a long time. I go, oh yeah, I guess I haven't.
I think we can all relate to that. The next one is, what is on your bucket list?
Oh, I think I want to go. I'd like to travel the world, but some of the things I want to see are especially the East and the pyramids, and I've been to Europe. I also want to go to Asia. So my wife and I are planning a trip sooner or later there, and so that's kind of on our bucket list. And see the pyramids and maybe go to around the world and see China and stuff like that.
What countries have you visited?
Been all over the United States. I haven't been all over Europe, so there's always more I could go back to see. But I'm kind of now looking towards the Far East and Japan and China.
Okay. What do people get wrong about you?
I don't think they get much wrong about me. A lot of people sometimes say, do you talk to fans? Well, like they'll walk up to me and say, hi, I know who you are. I say, oh, hi, how are you? And they, do you talk to fans? And I'm thinking, gee, I don't know. Why wouldn't I? Why do you think you're a person I wouldn't want to talk to? But, I think that's, I like my fans, and I have a really good time dealing with them. So it's always nice, and they always have nice things to say, and they always have interesting questions. Why did this happen? Well, because that's the way the show was written that week.
Is there something that you long believed was true, but have since found out is not?
Probably that life gets easier. Life is something that you go through, but every time you think you have it made, something happens. And it's not usually that bad, especially in my life. A lot of people have had a lot worse things happen, but I've had a very excellent life, and I've had a lot of fun living it. But, I'm so lucky, I think, is probably what makes me the happiest. I'm lucky to have had all the people I've met in my life and all the things I've been able to do. And I just wish everybody could have a life as good as mine, but I know most people don't.
All right. Last time we talked to Tony Dow, we asked him these questions. We'll ask you, what do you miss about the 50s and 60s?
It's not like I miss, honestly, anything, because things I don't think have changed that much. I mean, I still have a lot of my same friends. Sadly, a few of them have passed away, but not very many, luckily. I think the 50s were a fun time. I have more fun now because there is a lot more things that are available to me. In the 50s, I couldn't go to a lot of, restaurants or bars or different places that I can go to now. I can also meet a lot more people now as a child. There's not that many places that you can go, that you can go a lot more places as an adult and meet people that are very interesting and have conversations with them. So I'm very happy with my life now, and I always have been. Each, portion of my life has been very, very different, and each one has been very exciting, and I liked it a lot.
Okay. And what do you not miss about being in the 50s and 60s?
Well, I think a lot of the 50s and 60s were, there was a lot of people living very hard lives by their own choice, but, I saw a lot of friends of mine and people that I knew that, could have done a lot better and got caught up in things. So a lot of them came back, but some of them never did. So it was a fun life, but people found out that when you live hard, it's hard to come back.
That's very true. Let's see. The next one is, tell us about your worst or weirdest habit.
I don't think I have any weird habit. I don't. I lead a fairly normal life. I don't think I really. My worst habit, my wife might tell you, is I guess I snore at night sometimes, but I don't ever hear it, so it doesn't bother me.
If you could travel to any time period, Jerry, where would you go?
Probably the future. I mean, I think that would be the past. Not that I wouldn't want to travel there, but I know what it'd be. The future, I think, would be more exciting because it'd be all new. But I wouldn't if only given the choice of the past. I think I would like to have lived in the medieval times. That I know would have been a lot tougher life, but I think it would have been very interesting.
While I respect that answer, I definitely would not want to go to the medieval time period. I think if I had to pick one, going back to the 80s, even though I lived through the 80s, it was as kind of a small child. I think I would like to actually be an adult in the 1980s. That seems like it would be a lot of fun. Let's go to the next question, though. It's a fan question, and they ask, if you had to portray a person from history, who would you choose to play?
Maybe Kennedy. People have always told me that I look a lot. In fact, when I went to Hyannisport when I was much younger, I actually got into the compound, and people thought I was a cousin, not a Kennedy, but a Kennedy cousin. And I walked into the cousin. All of a sudden, the guard came up and said, "Wait a minute, what?" And I told him who I was. He said, "Well, we thought you were one of the Kennedys. They're not allowed in here."
And if they were going to make a movie about your life, what actor would you want to play you?
I have no idea. I wouldn't even have the foggiest. There are so many good actors out there that I would let the talent agents and people bring them up. But I hope they're somebody that at least looks a little like me. I know I've seen so many shows where people that I've known have had other people play them, and I'm thinking, that looks nothing like them. They don't talk like them. They don't look like them. How did they pick that person?
What do you think is something that we should all be paying more attention to?
Oh, probably the government, but it doesn't really do much good. But you always have to watch out for the government to see what they're doing.
I could not agree with you more. Next question is, what is a trend that's current right now that you wish would just go away?
I hate to tell you, but trends don't bother me, because if I don't like them, I don't follow them, and I don't care if other people do if they want to waste their time.
Jerry, is there a food that you just can't stand, and what would it be? What is a food that you would avoid at all costs?
Now, you'd think I'd say Brussels sprouts, because that's what the Beaver did on the show. But there's almost no food that I don't like. I don't like really spicy foods. But that would just be any genre of food that was real spicy. I don't like hot food that I eat and it burns my mouth. They say, "Oh yeah, just have a drink of water." No, I don't want anything that burns my mouth, so I have to drink water.
Another fan question came in. What is your favorite thing about having been the Beaver?
Probably the people that I've got to meet, especially people that, and I'm not trying to be whatever. I'm not trying to be like above other people, but people that other people have not had a chance to even talk to. I've had long conversations like with Bob Hope, Alan Ladd, Alfred Hitchcock. I sat on Alfred Hitchcock's lap. How many actors can say that? Oh, I guess a few females, but not many males. But I've just known people all my life, and people readily accept me that other people find maybe not standoffish, but I mean scientists that I've met and different people my whole life, because I grew up in their living room, and a lot of them just feel like I'm somebody they know, even though I know that they don't know me. They think they do, and I make friends with them, and they're usually very nice people.
All right, we are almost to the end of our interview here, and I just want to say on behalf of all of the fans, all of the people who have written in, the fans of the Facebook group for the Leave It to Beaver and the new Leave It to Beaver, those are 158,000 strong. On behalf of our listeners, I just want to thank you for giving everybody those memories of Leave It to Beaver, for being on that show, for being proud to have been on the show, and continue to go to fan cons and be accessible to the fans. I think that's awesome. And on behalf of everybody, I just want to say thank you.
I had more fun doing it than you have watching it over and over again. So, it was a very good part of my life and something I'm very proud of, but it was also a lot of fun.
My thanks goes out to Jerry Mathers for joining us on the show again this week, as well as the official Facebook group for Leave It to Beaver and the new Leave It to Beaver who let us in on this interview. We're so happy and thankful to those two Facebook groups. We want you to go check those out. Subscribe, sign up. There's only, I think there's over 158,000 members in this group. It's amazing. how many people are following the show, even after all of these years. I think 62 years is when the premiere made its debut. You can follow us on social media. We're at Fancounters Live. The one thing that I really want you to do, please go to your favorite podcast source. Give us a 5-star review. It doesn't take a very long time to do it. Click the 5 stars. If you want to write something about the show, we would greatly appreciate it. And we do look forward to reading all of those reviews in the near future. Until next week, when we do some ranting in tribute of the great Jim Florentine, we'll talk to you later. Have a great week. Bye-bye.